So this is the new ASUS Zenfone 12 Ultra, and look, I don't know the pricing on this. I asked, but I haven't got the price back yet, but I'll put it on the screen if I get it on time. It's not coming to North America, but it will work on North American networks. I've tested this here in Canada on TELUS and Rogers, which means it'll work just fine on AT&T and T-Mobile in the States. And there's a lot of things I like about this phone, but there's just a few things that just need to be refined, especially if you're selling this thing for $900. And look, the design of this phone looks very similar to the ASUS ROG Phone 9 Pro, which I reviewed not too long ago. They share a very similar form factor. They're about the same thickness, the same height, the same width. Even some of the port placement is almost identical. On the bottom over here, you have a headphone jack, which is fantastic. There's just not a lot of phones on the market right now that have a headphone jack, especially at $900. You have your Type-C port over in the corner. Not the best positioning. I would have rather had it in the middle, but not a big deal. Then of course you have your SIM tray, which you can obviously put in your SIM card. Now I like having a headphone jack, even all these years later. If you want to wear a proper pair of headphones, not worry about charging and listen to more high fidelity music, it gives you that option. Now obviously this is water resistant. You have this massive camera bump on the back. It's the same cameras as the ROG Phone 9 Pro. They just changed the layout a little bit. And instead of having an anime matrix, LED lines spanning across the back and all the gaming vibes you'd see on this guy, you just have the ASUS Zenfone lettering directly in the middle. The phone feels really good to hold. Like, it's not super slippery. It is a black device, so obviously you're going to see a lot of fingerprints on this. It does come with a case in the box, but it doesn't come with a charger, which I find really weird because the charging brick or the charger, this thing can support 65 watts, right? And usually, you know, Asian countries tend to include a charger that can support that speed, which means you can also top it up to 100% in just like 39 minutes. Now the device weighs about 220 grams. There's no infrared sensor, so you can't change the TV. Now the one thing that I don't like is the security features of this phone. Like, it's still using an optical sensor. I feel like most high-end phones these days, minus the iPhone, are using ultrasonic fingerprint sensors, and the animations are kind of clunky. Like, it's pretty quick, right? But like, there's just no, I don't know, it just doesn't have the same sort of wonderful animations that other phones have. It's kind of just like a little bit jarring when you get into your device. Again, I'm super nitpicking here, but I would have loved to see an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner. Now the display is quite big. We're talking about a 6.78-inch display. It's a Samsung flexible OLED display, Victus 2 glass on the front and on the back, and then you have an LTPO panel that can do 100 to 120 hertz. But if you're in game mode, and only in game mode, the high refresh rate can go all the way up to 144 hertz. So not as high as the ROG Phone 9 Pro, but still way more than enough. And the peak brightness on this guy is 2500 nits with about 1600 nits of high brightness mode. Now, I like this display, but I don't love this display. Like right now, I'm in the normal, natural profile, and I still find the screen to be a bit oversaturated. Also, I find the HDR on this phone not to be as good as other devices on the market. I was comparing it to the Galaxy S25 Ultra, and it just couldn't bring out some of that dynamic range, and it just couldn't get as bright in certain areas as that other device. Now, if you're sensitive to PWM, I don't know the frequency modulation on this phone, but they do have a low brightness anti-flicker when it's under 50%. So that should help with PWM flicker if you're sensitive and get headaches from that stuff. But look, the front-facing camera is in the top middle. It's not the best front-facing camera considering it's a 32 megapixel camera. I mean, the photos are fine. Like, I'm not upset about the photos. What I am upset about is that it can only shoot full HD video instead of 4K. Okay, front-facing camera of the ASUS Zenfone 12 Ultra. It's unfortunately not able to shoot in 4K. The highest you can do is full HD 30 for the front-facing camera. I'm just comparing it to the Galaxy S25 Ultra to give you guys some context so you guys can let me know how it looks. It's a snowy day, but it's not a sunny day, so both of these cameras should be able to handle the exposure just fine. And yeah, let me know how the audio sounds. Now the speakers on this, there's two of them, as most phones have these days. And look, it's clean, it's clear. Even at max volume, there's definitely no distortion, but it's just not as bright and loud as other high-end smartphones on the market. software is very basic on this phone. Like, they didn't go out of their way to really develop more than they needed to in terms of how Android should look on their devices. It's as close to stock Android as you can get. Not Pixel OS, but like regular stock Android. And you know what? That's fine, right? Like, I don't need anything fancy. And in some ways, people prefer a more minimalistic design to their smartphone. Like, you have all the basic features you'd expect on this phone. And obviously, this being another AI year, ASUS is pushing a lot of AI capabilities. There's nothing new or drastically different compared to other devices on the market. Like, you still have Circle to Search, you have AI document summary, you have basically all the standard AI stuff you can think of is now part of the Zenfone series. But look, like, I've been using this thing, like, the animations are very basic, but the phone itself is super smooth. I've never felt like I couldn't do anything due to the way they customized their UI. And because this thing is rocking a Snapdragon 8 Elite, it's just ridiculously fast. Like, the ROG Phone 9 Pro still holds one of the highest scores I've tested on a phone, but this is right up there with it. As for battery life, there is a 5,500 milliamp hour battery inside of here. It's not as good as the 6,000 milliamp hour battery in the OnePlus 13. I definitely got better battery life on that, but the battery life on here is still really good. Like, you're not gonna feel like you need to charge your phone at the end of the day. Like, you're gonna have enough battery life to take you into the next and charge it when you get to work or when you have time to sit down. So definitely a 1.5 to 2 day phone. Battery life obviously has wireless charging, and you can use 15-watt wireless charging. And as I mentioned before, it supports 65-watt charging, but you need to buy an adapter to support it. Now, this camera, it's not going to win any awards for taking the best photos on the market, but it's a very capable and decent camera. Like, I don't think it's a bad one. It's just not, you know, going to beat an iPhone, or it's not going to beat an S25 Ultra, and quite frankly, it's probably not going to beat the OnePlus 13. But it does have a 50 megapixel wide lens, a 13 megapixel ultra wide lens, and then you have a 32 megapixel 3x optical telephoto lens, and then you can zoom all the way up to 30 times using their hyper clarity feature, which is just another fancy word for digital zoom. Pictures I took from this phone, at least during the day, were obviously quite good, and it does look a little bit different in the sense that you are not getting consistency between the different lenses. Like, if you go from the main lens to the ultra wide lens, you'll definitely see some color shifting. It just doesn't line up, whereas other phones have kind of solved that problem. But look, it takes good photos all around, even at nighttime. Like, if you're taking nighttime photos on this guy, you're going to get some really nice pictures out of it. I didn't have any issues or thought this was inferior to all other smartphones on the market. It does take solid nighttime photos. 4K video is interesting on this. I do find it to sometimes be a little bit saturated, but it does take decent 4K video. I did have a little bit of fun using their portrait video feature where it kind of blurs the background. Again, it looks fake, but it's one of the better portrait videos I've seen on a phone, and it's kind of fun to play with if you're trying to do something interesting with your videos. So here's the thing about the Zenfone 12 Ultra. There's a lot of things I like about this phone. Like, if you want a headphone jack and a premium smartphone, this is probably on your list. But for the money, and if the headphone jack is not your #1 priority, there are better alternatives. Even something like the OnePlus 13 will give you a better camera, better overall experience, and a more refined product for the money. And the one thing that truly irks me is the update schedule. Let's be honest here, ASUS is not known to have the best and fastest updates being pushed out on their previous devices. And if it's anything like the Phone 9 Pro and the 11 Ultra from last year, that means you're only getting 2 years of Android updates and 4 years of security. This tells me one thing. You're just not serious about making smartphones. You're making them for the sake of making them, but you're not committing. And why should I commit a lot of money to your phone if you can't show me that type of support? Most companies now are offering at least 4 years of updates plus 6 security. Some companies like Samsung and Pixel are offering 7 years of updates. And if you want to play in that field and charge this kind of money, you gotta do it too. If not, this phone should be retailing for $500-600. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.